You didn't just stumble onto this video. Some part of you searched for it, or paused on it, or felt something in the first 3 seconds and stayed. And right now, there's probably a voice in your head already analyzing whether that's true about you, or whether you're the exception, or whether I'm just saying that to hook everyone in. That voice, that's exactly what we're here to talk about. Because most people think overthinkers just worry a lot. Like it's a personality quirk. A nervous habit dressed up in a personality. But that description doesn't even come close to what's actually happening. And when you finally understand the real mechanism behind it, something shifts. Not because the thoughts stop, but because they start making sense for the first time. So let's go deep. Your brain has a built-in default state. The moment you stop focusing on something external, a task, a conversation, a screen, a specific network of brain regions switches on automatically. It handles self-reflection, future planning, replaying past events, reading the emotional temperature of social situations. In most people, it hums quietly in the background. In overthinkers, it runs like a generator that never shuts off. Loud. Constant. Exhausting. But here's the thing, that's not the most important part. The real question is, why won't it stop? Because the brain isn't breaking down. It's doing something it believes is critical. And understanding that changes everything. There's a fundamental difference between two types of thinking that feel almost identical from the inside. The first is genuine reflection, where your mind moves through a problem, considers options, and actually arrives somewhere useful. The second is repetitive mental cycling, where you loop through the same thought, the same scenario, the same moment, over and over, in slightly different versions, none of which bring you any closer to peace or resolution. Research in clinical psychology has shown that this kind of repetitive, unproductive mental cycling doesn't just feel bad, it actively intensifies emotional pain while you're inside it, and over time, it creates a measurable vulnerability to depression. The thinking doesn't dissolve the emotion. It preserves it. Keeps it alive. Keeps it sharp, and the brutal irony is this, the reason you keep thinking is because somewhere beneath it all, you genuinely believe that if you think hard enough, long enough, carefully enough, you'll land on the thought that finally makes it okay. You won't. But your brain doesn't know that. So it keeps searching. Usually at 2 a.m. usually when you have to be awake in 5 hours. Now here's the part that tends to hit people quietly, a lot of overthinkers grew up in environments where uncertainty had a cost. Not necessarily dramatic, just the everyday kind. Not knowing what mood someone would be in when they walked through the door. Not being sure whether you'd read a situation correctly. Learning to read the room because getting it wrong had consequences. In those environments, your brain made a very smart adaptation, thinking ahead became a survival skill. Anticipating reactions. Preparing for outcomes. Staying one step ahead of whatever was coming. That was useful once. The problem is the brain doesn't automatically retire strategies that worked. It keeps running them. So now you're doing advanced threat analysis at the grocery store, in a text message that says, okay, in a meeting where someone's expression was slightly off for half a second. The strategy is still running. The environment is completely different. The stress response, though, that's real either way. There's a specific flavor of overthinking that I want to sit with for a moment, because it's the one that's most misunderstood. Some overthinkers aren't primarily worried about outcomes or decisions. They're caught in a loop about other people, specifically, how those people experience them. Running mental simulations of how a message might land. Replaying a conversation from 3 days ago looking for the moment something could have been taken the wrong way. Drafting a text, deleting it, rewriting it, not because the words are wrong, but because every possible way it might be received needs to be accounted for. If you've ever canceled plans and spent 20 minutes agonizing over how to word a 2-sentence message, rewriting it to make sure it doesn't sound cold, or presumptuous, or like you're blaming them, or like you're being dramatic, you know exactly what this is. And here's what I want you to hear clearly, that isn't neurosis. That is a form of deep, active empathy, a genuine care about the impact you have on other people, running with no off switch. The circuitry behind it is connection. The cost of it is exhaustion, the hardest part. These same people, who will spend 40 minutes reassuring a friend that they are not a burden, will lie awake in the dark fully convinced that they are one. The compassion is limitless, for everyone else. For themselves, there's a completely different, much harsher rulebook. Now, here's something that took researchers a while to fully understand, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Trying to force yourself to stop thinking about something almost guarantees it comes back stronger. This isn't willpower failure. This isn't weakness. It's a documented feature of how the suppression of thought actually works neurologically. When you instruct your brain to not think about something, it has to monitor for that thought constantly, to make sure it's still suppressed. Which means the thought is never really gone. It's just being held down. And the moment your attention drifts, or your energy drops, it floods back, harder than before. Which means every time you've told yourself to just stop thinking about it, you were unknowingly setting up a rebound. Every time someone helpfully suggested you stop worrying, same outcome. It wasn't your fault. But it does mean that suppression was never the answer. There's something else worth paying attention to. Most overthinkers will tell you they can make completely effortless decisions about things they don't care about. What to order, which route to take, what to watch. No problem. But let it be a relationship, a message to someone they value, a choice that carries any emotional weight, and everything stalls. The spiral appears. The loops begin. That's not random. That's a map. The overthinking doesn't distribute evenly across your life. It clusters, almost precisely, around the things that matter most to you. The relationships you're afraid of losing. The version of yourself you're trying to protect. The people whose opinion carries genuine weight. Your anxiety isn't chaos, it's just communicating your values in the most inefficient way imaginable. There's also a quieter pattern that doesn't get talked about enough. Overthinkers often struggle with stillness, not because they don't want rest, but because stillness removes the one thing that keeps the volume manageable: distraction. The moment there's nothing incoming, the backlog arrives. So they stay in motion. Stay occupied. Keep something playing in the background. Keep consuming. Because stopping means the thoughts get uninterrupted access, and that's too much. And the longer that pattern runs, the harder it becomes to simply be somewhere without needing to immediately be somewhere else. So where does that leave us? Understanding this doesn't make the thinking stop. It was never supposed to do that. What it does is give you a different entry point. Instead of asking, how do I make this go away, which, as we've established, typically makes it worse, you can start asking a more honest question. What is this thought actually trying to protect me from, and does that threat still exist? Because most of the time, it doesn't. The danger your brain is preparing for dissolved years ago. What remains is a deeply practiced habit that was once necessary and now just runs on its own momentum. The goal isn't a perfectly quiet mind. Chasing silence just adds frustration to noise. The goal is a more honest relationship with your own thinking. The ability to watch a spiral begin, recognize it for what it is, and say, I see what you're doing. I understand why. And I'm going to decide how much of tonight you actually get. That capacity, that one shift, is most of the work. If this landed, subscribe, there's more here. And check the pinned comment. I've left something there I think you'll actually use.